In this video, we will be covering the gradient tool. Now, here in the toolbar, nested under the gradient tool, we have a couple more items. We will not be covering those items. As I said before, I really want to concentrate on tools that you folks more than likely would use for your posters or for any of your Photoshop editing projects. The other tools that I've just shown you folks, the paint bucket tool and 3D material drop tool, depending on what type of project you have, more than likely you folks will almost always use the gradient tool and not so much the others. So I'll leave those up to you folks to look or look into on your own. Okay, so let's jump into the gradient tool. You need at least two colors to use the gradient tool, and those two colors are usually represented by the two colors down here in the lower left corner of your toolbar, which is the background color, white in this instance, and the foreground color, which is black in this case. And basically, what you do is, if you see my cursor here, it's a crosshairs. You can draw out your gradient line. Okay, it's a line that you draw out. So what you're going to do is left mouse click and hold down your left mouse button and drag out a line, and the length of your line will determine how much of a gradient you have. So I'm going to go from top to bottom in this example. So I'm going to hold down my left mouse button and draw out a line to the bottom of my canvas here and let go. As you can see here, the gradient started with 100% black, and it slowly, the gradient slowly changes to 100% white. So these two colors in the lower left hand corner determine your starting and ending color. Now, you can do the gradient as far as how you want to lay it out in any direction. You can go left to right, right to left, like so. You come back this way, and you can even do it at angles. So it's a great tool to use for gradation. Okay. Now, if I went the opposite way, the black would be on the bottom and the white on the top. So usually the foreground color would be the starting color, and the background color would be the ending color. Now, if we go up to the toolbar options and we see this little gradient up here, if we click on that, we get the gradient editor window that pops up. And all of these here are preset gradients, meaning that every time you activate or enable this gradient editor by clicking on this box here, you get these same gradients that pop up. You can use those if you like, or you can create your own. Now, for the most part, you're usually going to use one of these two gradients. And if we go with this second one here, let me show you. So I just selected this second one just by left mouse clicking on it and hitting OK. It's kind of hard to uh, notice on this picture, but basically with this second option, as far as the preset gradients go, you only have the foreground color, which in our case is black currently, and then it fades into a clear um, or nothing at all. No secondary color. Okay, just the foreground color, and it fades to nothingness. You also have the opposite of that, which would be white down here to nothingness. Okay, so let me go ahead and choose the second one, click OK. So if I do the gradient once more, left mouse click and drag, looks pretty much the same, right? You got black as a foreground color and it fades into nothingness. Now, because the background color is white, you folks may think that it's like my first example where it went black to white, but no, it's actually just black fading into nothingness, and it just so happens that white is the background color. So if I back up here, and let's say for the background color I use green, bright green, and I fill the background with green, I'm going to hold down the Option key, Alt for you folks on Windows, and hit the Delete key on a Mac, and I think it's the Backspace key for you Windows users. So hold down Alt or Option and hit the Backspace or Delete key on your keyboard. Oh, I'm sorry. That's the opposite of what I wanted to do. You're going to hold down the Command key on the Mac and hit the Delete key. There you go. Now for you Windows users, it's going to be hold down the Control key and then hit the Backspace key. That'll fill your canvas with the background color. And as you saw before, I made that little mistake there. Holding down the Alt key or Option key and then hitting Delete or Backspace on your keyboard will fill your canvas with the foreground color. Just a little bit of hotkey trivia for you folks. Now I'm going to use the gradient once more, and you'll see that it only fills the top part with black, and it fades into a clear it fades to clear basically, so that the background color can shine or show through. If I were to go from the bottom, let me find my cursor here. There it is at the bottom, and then left mouse click and hold and drag out a line and let go. Of course, down on the bottom now you got the black. So grading is a real great way to paint out gradient in your background without a lot of work. You could manually use the paintbrush and start off with one color, switch to another color, and paint out a gradient by messing with the opacity. But this is a great way to do it really quick. Okay, especially for skies. If you folks, have like a evening sky, usually you'll see a lot of different colors in the sky. This is a great way to paint out a sky really quick. Let's go back up to the options box here, the gradient editor. So you notice right now with my green and black foreground and background colors active in a toolbar, that's shown here in the first preset square. So whatever is your active foreground and background color will always show in the first square. Okay. Now you also have preset gradients here. So let's say if I picked, let's go with the chrome one. You notice that it changes here depending on what preset is selected. I'm going to hit OK. And I'm going to go back to new here. Now, if you notice, I have the that Chrome gradient preset loaded here in my editor. and that ignores whatever color is here in the toolbar. So if I drag out a line now, you get a chrome sort of look to the gradient. You can go backwards. You can go at an angle. So it's more pronounced in this example. You can also, with a combination of the selection tool, I'm going to select the rectangle marquee select. You can draw out a rectangle here and go back to the gradient tool, and if you put out a gradient, it'll appear only within the marquee select area. Okay, so I noticed I got a feather here from when we were doing our example, so I'm gonna undo that and turn the feathering on the marquee select tool back down to 0, so we don't have any feathering. I draw out a square again, go back to our gradient tool and do a gradient within the box. You got a nice clean line here. This is great for text when you want to do that old 80s style text. I can show that to you folks right now, so let me undo this, and I will be showing you folks the text tool in a few videos from now. So let me make the font a lot larger. There you go. And retype text. Now currently the text is orange. We have an orange setting there, but I'm gonna just leave that as it is, and I'm gonna select the text. You can do a selection or shape selection on a layer by holding down your Command or Control key and clicking on the thumbnail. So in this case it's text. I'm going to create a new layer, turn off the text so that we just have the selection for text here. Go back to the gradient. We still have the chrome gradient available, and I'm going to just draw a line about the same, just a little bit larger than the text, and let go. And that's how you add gradient to the text. It's a little bit confusing for you folks for a number of reasons. I haven't shown you the layer system yet, nor the text tool, so just know the reason I showed this to you is just to show that you folks can add gradients to other existing items using your selection tools that I did show you guys, like the rectangular, the lasso, and even the magic wand. Okay, so your gradient tool is very versatile and powerful. So I'm going to click on the options box again, and let's go back to what it currently is with the two default colors of black and green. Now I've just shown you folks the presets, but you're not restricted to the presets. You can customize your gradients. So as you can see here, we have black to green and everything in between. Okay, now if you folks want to change up the colors, here's how you do it. First of all, you can determine how much of a certain color is dominant in a gradient. To do that, you just grab one of these two bottom sliders and you can slide the gradient up and down the slider so you get more of a particular color than the other. This little diamond in the middle shows the 50% mark, or the exact middle between the two colors. So if you want a perfect blend, of the two colors shown here, in this case black and green, whatever color is in line with the diamond right here in the center, that's 50% black and 50% green. So a mixture of the two. And even this icon here can slide up and down. Okay, so you can change that. And when you slide this up and down, it changes the location here. The location is in percentage. So if you want more black, you can do that as well. And you notice the location is 50%. So it goes left to right, 0 to 100%. And this indicator, let me get it back here, will show its position on the gradient scale. Most cases it'll be the 50% mark or halfway mark. Now I just shown you folks how to change the scale here. Okay, and as you notice, as I move these two colors back and forth, the location also changes down here. So right now the black slider is at 0, and if I move it up, it goes up the scale all the way to 100. And the green slider is already at 100, and you go backwards towards 0. Now you can add colors to your gradient scale here. You can add multiple I guess colors of whatever is active. So right now by clicking on this slider here, it shows that green is the active color. If I click on this, it'll show that black is the active color if I click on this slider here. Now if you want to make multiple sliders, so create copies of these sliders, all you have to do is, if you take a look at my cursor, it's a pointer now, but if you place the cursor just under the bar here, you notice it switches to a finger, and if you left mouse click once, you'll create a copy. But what it'll do is it'll create a copy of whatever's the active color in this box. Okay, so let me hit Command Z to undo that, Control Z for you guys on the window. So you notice that the active color is now green. To change the active color, remember, you just click on any one of these bottom sliders to change the active color. So let's go with green. Now that green is the active color, if you come up just under the bar here and you click, you'll create another slider, and that slider has green in it, and you can slide that up and down. Now if you want to delete a slider, all you have to do is left mouse click on it, or left mouse hold and drag it off. So I'm gonna left mouse click, hold, and drag it off, and then release the left mouse button out here. So that's how you delete sliders. You add sliders by going just under the bar, wait for the cursor to change to a finger, and then click. And to delete sliders, you drag these icons off to the side by left mouse clicking and holding down and dragging and releasing off to the side. Okay. And notice when I placed a new slider, it gave me 2 diamonds instead of 1. So what this represents is the halfway mark between this slider and this slider, and this diamond represents the halfway mark between this slider and this slider. It's just that you can't see any real difference here because these 2 sliders represent green. Now if I was to click on this slider, the middle slider, and choose a different color, either by clicking here. You can change foreground, or just clicking straight on the color itself to bring up a color picker. Say if I wanted to add red to as the color, I can just click here in a red area and move up the slider, click OK. So now you see the active color is red for this slider, and you can see it represented here. And of course, like these other two, you can slide the color up and down. You can always delete these corner sliders as well. Just drag them off, and now this is the end slider. You can slide that all the way to the beginning. You can slide this one off like so and have only one color. To bring another slider back, remember, just go up and click, and then here you go, you got your other slider. Yeah, so that's pretty much straightforward. If you want to create another color here, just click, and then now that this is the active color, if I come here, choose say magenta, click OK, it changes it to magenta. And you can slide this and swap places. All you got to do is just go slide it right past the other color, and it'll pop into the middle. You can rearrange it that way. If I wanted black to be in the middle, just slide it past. Now black is there and magenta is on that side. And you can add multiple sliders as much as you like, and then just click on each slider to make it the active slider. So I'm going to change this to blue, click OK. I'm going to click on this slider, change it to green. I'm going to click on a black slider, change it to yellow. Oh. And then this one here, I'll change it to orange. So you can add as much sliders as you like, and you can create a great looking gradient, in this case a rainbow from red, orange, yellow, green, blue, and well, this is magenta, but let's just pretend it's purple. And you can keep adding multiple gradients for a real awesome effect. So if I change each of these new sliders that I just put up, you get a real sense of the different types of shades of different colors that I could add, like so. So that's how you add colors and take away colors from your gradient bar here. Now you can also change the opacity. Okay, so you notice when I grab the top sliders here, and you can add more same way, like so. I'm going to take those off for now. So you can change the opacity by clicking on any one of these sliders, and you notice the opacity becomes highlighted, and you can no longer change the color only when these are selected. And you can change it to say 50%. Hit enter, and now when I pull out a gradient line and let go, you get a 50%. Starts off with 100 and it fades to 50%. You can do that. Now if I click on the gradient scale again and click on this and go all the way down to 0, so I'm going to type in 0 and hit OK. Now if I do the gradient line again, you get a little bit clear. Let me try it this way. Not too sure. Let me see here. I thought you could go all the way to 0% opacity, and that doesn't seem to be the case. I think you have to change. Now, the opacity here, what this opacity does is it changes the opacity for the entire gradient. Um, I'll have to look into why this one isn't, the opacity here isn't coming down to 0%. It's faded a little bit, but let me try 0. Hit OK. I'm gonna try something out here, and let me try the gradient once more. So as you can see here, it goes from real bright to darker. So we know that the opacity is working, but it doesn't go all the way down to, looks like more like 50% if anything, even though it says 0 here. But if you wanted to change the gradient or the entire gradient, you could change it with the opacity here by turning on the slider. So if I was to paint out a gradient now, you get a lighter gradient at about 50% or 49% in this case. So that's the gradient tool for you. Now there's a few more options here. Let me use one of the presets, the rainbow preset. Folks can also change the gradient type. If you click here, or actually instead of the gradient type, I'm sorry, let me hit OK. So we have the rainbow gradient right now. It's a little bit lighter because remember the opacity is down. So let me turn the opacity up to 100, pull that down again. We get the rainbow. You can change the type of gradient. If you see these squares up here, right now this is the what's called the, I believe, the linear gradient. Usually if you hover over each type of gradient, it has a little pop-out title that tells you what type, but I believe we might have turned that off in the options. So this is the linear gradient. You got linear lines going across or this way if you wanted it this way. Now the next one is a circular gradient, and what you do in this case, instead of coming to the edges, you start from the middle or anywhere you want actually, and you go to the edge and you get a circle gradient. Now more than likely you'll do it from the middle, but you don't have to. You can come off to the side here and do a gradient that way. You just notice that there's more of the last color in a gradient if you do it that way. You can come up to this corner right here and go all the way across to the bottom. You got a gradient that way. And the next one here I forget what the name is, but I'll just paint it out for you folks. You get that effect, almost like a pinpoint type of gradient. This is I believe a reflective gradient. So if I do a gradient now, it's kind of hard to see with the rainbow one. But basically, it's a reflection of one side. So red being the end on this side and this side, you see a reflection of that going from the middle to the right. Okay, and then finally you get the diamond gradient, like so. Okay, but the most common is the linear gradient, and I've been showing you folks an example of what happens when you go all the way down. You don't have to go all the way down. You can make your gradient halfway. You can go just a tiny bit like that. You don't have to go from the edge either. You can start in the middle and do that. Okay. Let me go back to the default gradient, which is the foreground and background color. So you can do the full range. You can go halfway if you wanted. Just know that if you folks do make it shorter, you'll get more of one color. You can start in the middle and do that. You can go this way. So experiment with it. You can also reverse. We're not going to really bother with these two options here, but you notice there's a reverse box. So if I do a gradient like this, if I wanted it black to green, all I would have to do is go the opposite way from how I did this gradient. With this gradient, I went from the top to bottom. You could manually go bottom to top and get the same effect. But if you want to go, just keep creating gradient from top to bottom, but you want to switch the colors, all you got to do is check this box, reverse. Now when you go top to bottom, you get green at the top instead of black. So just remember that to reverse that, you got to just click on that box again, and you get black at the top, green at the bottom this time. So as I said before, this is a great option to use when you're doing like a sky. So say if you're making a twilight sky or early evening sky. In most cases, what I do is I use these two colors in a toolbar. I just select the foreground color, go to blue, and I choose like a probably middle to darker blue. In this case, I'm just going to use right about there. And for the background color, I'm going to use a lighter blue. So I have a dark blue foreground, light blue background. And when I draw out my gradient now, so you have a real nice sky to start off with, a background. If you wanted to get even more, I guess you could say technical, you could create another slider, and instead of this blue, go with a darker blue, almost black. So, I gotta switch these colors here. Let me get this color here, this color here, and put this color right about here. So now when you paint out a sky, you notice that it's really dark up here and whatnot. But if I wanted more of the light sky, I would have to edit this either by using this slider to give me more of the light sky, or just slide this slider up like so, and maybe even this one, so I get more of the brighter sky. Okay, and then could use your paintbrush tool and get the white back here by clicking on the default color, switching it to white with my paintbrush. Maybe lower the hardness down to 0. You can start to paint out clouds. It's a kind of a sloppy way of painting out clouds, but you guys get the gist. So this is a great way to make a background or start a background and to paint out stuff. Now I'm going to use the rock picture that I did a few videos ago. Sometimes you see brochures, magazines with a gradient background, and I'll show that to you folks now. Now I'm going to click on the gradient editor, and I'm going to switch. Let me get rid of this gradient here. I'm going to switch to the black to clear gradient. Okay, and black to clear, and let me try this. I'll go all the way across, see how that looks at first. It's okay, I guess. By the way, as you're drawing out your line, like I am right here, if you hold down the shift key, it'll snap the gradient line into a straight line. Okay. And usually what magazines will do is they'll make a dark part of the gradient. And you can keep layering on gradients as well. As you notice, the more I do it and drag the line further, I drag the gradient out more. So you can layer multiple gradients on each other. It's like painting with a gradient. And some magazines will do something like this, where they have a gradient, then they have some kind of text. Like so. And they usually lay a gradient over the picture, usually off to the side, like what I just did, so that they can make the text that they type over the picture pop more, and it doesn't get lost in the background. Like if I put this text of the rock here, you can still see it, but not as much. Sometimes it can get lost. Like the background colors are dark already here, so you won't get lost that much, but they really pop when the background is black or darker, I should say. And you'll notice in a magazine they'll have like a title like this, then they'll have some type of writing on the side. So that's how they get that effect for like magazine pages and whatnot. So the gradient is a great tool to use in various situations. And that should wrap it up for this video. So practice on your folks' own. Try all sorts of different techniques with the gradient and see what kind of different combinations you